What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the channel. So this is the inside of my truck, which isn't too interesting, but lately I've been running this Ailunce HA1UV that I got from Retevis as my main mobile radio here in the truck. I don't run an actual mobile radio in the truck. There are a lot of reasons why I don't install one, but I've got this radio in a Ram mounts radio holder. I've got the speaker mic for it. I did a review on this a little while back, and I was really impressed with it. And I like this radio so much, I'm actually running it as my primary mobile radio now. I leave it in the truck here like this. I obviously can take it out and put the antenna back on and carry it around too. But I like this radio a lot. And so when Retevis reached out to me and said that they had a couple other radios for me to take a look at, I jumped on it because they are very, very similar to this radio. So let's head up to the shack and let me introduce the radios and we'll take a look at them and go from there. So we'll be back in just a minute. All right, so we're up in the shack now and we're going to take a look at these two radios, and these are going to look eerily similar. So these are Ailunce HA1Gs. So this is the GMRS version of the same radio I have in my truck. So the radio I have in my truck is the HA1UV, which is the 2 meter and 70 centimeter ham version. So this is the GMRS version. And I've said before that my GMRS radios get more use than my ham radios do, my handheld ham radios, my UHF, VHF stuff. I use HF ham radio more than anything else. But when we're talking about handhelds, yeah, my GMRS HTs get more use than anything else does. And so I've got two radios here they sent me. So I've got the standard black one, which looks exactly like the HA1UV in my truck. And then I have a green one. And this green is like this obnoxious fluorescent lime green. And that's kind of awesome because while it's obnoxious, if you've ever dropped a black radio in the woods before, and I have, it can be, sorry about my fingers, I'm trying to get the screen adjusted up just a little bit here. It can be really hard to find it on the ground. The green one, you are not losing. I don't care if it's dirt or mud or leaves or snow, you're gonna be able to see this thing. So I've got a pair of radios here we're gonna talk a little bit about. Now understand that everything that I said about the HA1UV is gonna apply to these radios. The same benefits, the same drawbacks. So let me just talk briefly about the things that I really like about these radios. We'll hop over to the computer. We'll take a look at the website. There is a firmware update for these radios. I will shoot a separate video on how to update the firmware on these. But let's just take a brief look at these radios and talk about some of the feature set and some of the things that I really like. Like I said, we'll hop over to the computer. We'll look at their website in a minute. But just some of the standout features for me. I'm a huge fan, I've said this before, of channel knobs. All right, so I don't have to push buttons up and down to change channels up and down. I can just spin the knob. That's also nice if you're going to wear this in, like if this is in a pouch and you can't get to the front, like let's say a Spectre Gear pouch, and you can't get to the front panel to change your channels. It's nice to have a top selector. This particular radio has a really good form factor. Let me get one of these out of the way. I'll get the black one out of the way. We'll talk about the yellow one. So this radio has a really good form factor. Let me just let me shut this off so that I'm not. So, all right, I wanted to shut the other radio off, make sure I wasn't going to get any interference between the two. So, form factor is good. It's very reminiscent of some of the Motorola radios. It's got a similar form factor. The screen is fantastic. I was a little leery of these color screens. I'm not a big fan of color screens on HTs. But these screens are very legible even in the sun. And to prove that, let's head outside and let's take a look at this radio in the sun. And we're going to compare it to another HT with a color screen. And you'll see the difference in how legible it is. So we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so we're outside now. And it's not super bright out, but it's bright enough out to be obnoxious. And I've harped on how I'm not a huge fan of color screens on these radios. I want to show you, so this is the Wouxun KGUV9V Pro, or sorry, KGUV9G Pro in the sun. All right, and you can, this is the screen at full brightness. And I mean, you can read it, but it is very hard to read. Now, let me grab the other radio here. Somebody wants to say hi. What's up, bud? Let me grab the other radio here, and we're going to do the same thing. So again, screen's at full brightness. In fact, the sun's coming out a little bit now. And this is way easier to read in the sun. So I'm going to give Retevis kudos for the screen on this. Even though it's color, it is markedly easier to read in the sun than a lot of the other color screen radios I use. So yeah, you know, if, again, I don't have super bright sun out right now, but it's obnoxious. There's some blue sky, and it's obnoxious enough, all right, that it's going to make these screens hard to read. And this one is perfectly legible. So that is a definite benefit to this particular radio. All right, let's head back upstairs. Okay, so we're back, and as you can see, this radio is way more legible in the sun than a lot of other color HTs are. So this screen is actually pretty good. It's not as good as one of those monochrome screens, but as far as color screens go, this one's way easier to see outdoors. A couple other things that are really good about this radio. It is IP67. We've talked about that before. We'll talk more about that when we get on the website. It is USB-C, and it does charge on everything. So this will charge on a standard 5-volt USB-C to USB-A charger. It will charge on a USB-C to USB-C cable, which a lot of these batteries and radios won't. It does use the Motorola style programming pins and microphone pins, so that's something to be aware of. This does come with a programming cable for this radio, so you can't just use a standard Kenwood jack programming cable or mic. The mic I have in the truck is the one from Retevis for this radio. The volume is very good. This gets very loud. The speaker placement is good. The microphone placement way up here in the corner is good because there's no way really for you to block it with your hand. That's a problem with some HTs. Is that microphone sometimes is in an odd place and you'll block it. This one is not. Yeah, so all in all, this is a really great package. And it's typical of what you would expect for a GMRS radio, right? So we have our standard 22 GMRS channels, right? GMRS 1 through 22. And then we've got our 8 repeater channels. And then a whole pile of DIY channels. So you can program all sorts of different repeaters with different CT/CSS tones and all those kinds of things. So it's obviously a dual VFO radio, so I can switch back and forth by pushing the scan button. I can switch between memories and VFO by long pressing exit. All right, and that'll switch to the VFO. So you can see I'm currently listening on the 2-meter calling frequency, 2-meter ham calling frequency. Long press again, it switches back to our standard channels again. The menu structure in this radio is identical pretty much to the HA1UV that we looked at. So you've got all your radio settings. You know, this is where you can change things like your display mode, your bands, your backlight, your key functions, your audio, all those kinds of things. Our Vox, power save, menu timeout settings, our language. We can save channels in here, our radio information. The next thing down are zones, so we can set individual zones. So if we want zones for specific things, you can see I've got 2 zones programmed in here. You can set zones. You can program individual channels through the channel function here. All right. Scan is exactly what it sounds like. Signaling, this is where like all your common signaling settings and your DTMF signal stuff is. Emergency, so you can set emergency channels. Call tone. FM radio, so this does have an FM radio in it. All right, so we've got FM radio, we've got our weather radio. This does have a weather alarm, so we can go in our NOAA channels.
Rochester and 36 at Jamestown.
All right, and we can set this up for a weather alarm, so if there's a weather alert, it'll notify us. We can do a factory reset, and we're back to our radio functions again. So again, if you go back, I'll put a card in the corner where you can look at my HA1UV review. And it's everything that I talked about on that radio is identical for this radio, other than this is a GMRS radio and that's a ham radio. Aside from that, it's identical. The only thing is, in that video, I mentioned that it didn't use a PD charger, and it does. It just is, it's a little sensitive to the cables and the bricks, but I have tried it on other ones and it does work. So let's head over to the computer here. I've got the website open. So let's head over to the computer here, and we'll take a look at some of the different features. So I will be right back. All right, so we're back, and we are on the Retevis website, and we are looking at the web page for this particular radio. So you can see the price on this radio is $42.99. That's very reasonable for what you're getting, I think. This is a well-built radio for the money. I mean, if I didn't think this radio was as good as it is, I wouldn't have the HA1UV in my truck. And I didn't put it there just because, you know, I was given the radio, but I actually like it that much. So, you know, it goes through some bullet points about the radio, about, you know, power output. It's a standard 5-watt HT. That's the limit on GMRS handhelds. It is IP67 waterproof. You know, it's got a big battery we'll talk about in a minute. It's easy to use. It's got extensive channel capacity, so on and so forth. You can pick both black and green. They're currently out of the black ones. Let's see if the green one's in stock. Green one is in stock. And let's see if you can get the black and green 2-pack. That's $100. That's in stock also, and that comes with the charging cradles and everything. All right, so they are available. So, you know, it gives us some basic information about the radio. Like I said, it is IP67. That's something that I like to have in the radios that I'm going to be using outside extensively. I hike a lot. I kayak a lot. I like my radios to be waterproof and dustproof. It's not necessary, but it is something that I prefer. So this radio will probably see a lot of use because of that. Like I said, the green one, I think, stands out, kind of like I have an orange S88G for the same reason. Easy to see on the ground if you drop it. Again, it's 5 watts, which is the sort of maximum power for a GMRS handheld. You do have your standard 8 repeater channels, as well as your 30 GMRS channels. And then there are 226 DIY channels. So you can program, let's say you want to program different frequencies with different tones. You can do that. You could program in different GMRS repeaters for different locations, right? Because there are only there are only 8 repeater channels on GMRS. So those same frequencies are going to be repeated in different places. So if you're going, let's say, from one city to another, or one park to another, or whatever, you might want to program different repeater channels on the same frequency with different CTCSS tones, and it'll allow you to put those all in different channels and name them accordingly. It's fairly heavy duty. These things are pretty robust feeling. I haven't thrown one around yet, but I'm sure eventually these will hit the ground. But these do not feel cheap in any way. They feel very sturdy, very robust. So I'm not too concerned about dropping mine. It's a 2800 milliamp hour battery. Just from my experience, it lasts quite a long time. I've been using that HA1UV a lot. And like I said, it is USB-C charging, and it is legit USB-C charging. It's not that half-hearted USB-C you see in some radios. It is, and when I did my initial HA1UV review, I said it was, but that just happened to be this one particular charger. I've tried it on multiple other chargers and had no problems. In my truck, I have it on a 35-watt PD outlet in the truck, and I charge that all the time in the truck, no problem. So it'll charge on pretty much any USB-C charging setup you have, from, you know, your wall charger to a USB-C in your vehicle, to a USB-A, to a power brick, whatever. I've charged mine on all sorts of stuff. So USB-C is one of the things that I really like to have, and it does have a charging light next to the port. Again, we do have NOAA weather. We talked about that, right? So we do have the NOAA weather stations, or the NOAA weather frequencies, as well as the NOAA weather alert. So if the weather alert goes off, the radio will notify you. It does have an emergency alarm. Not something I find terribly useful, but a lot of these radios have it. It does have dual standby and dual receive. Now, it's not going to be full, you know, it's not full duplex dual receive. It's not going to receive on both bands at the same time. You know, so if somebody's transmitting on both bands at once, you're not going to hear both of them. But you can listen to both, and when somebody transmits on one or the other, you'll hear it. Again, it's a 1.77-inch color screen, and we just saw that the color screen in the sun is quite good. It does have a VFO mode, which you saw. It does have sub-PTT, which means I can set one of the side buttons to transmit on the other VFO. So I could use the main push-to-talk button for VFO-A and one of the sub-PTT buttons for VFO-B. So without switching between channel A and channel B, I could transmit on either one. Again, it does have an FM radio, which you saw. It does have, obviously, key lock functions. And then it goes on through the specifications. I'm not going to go through all those. Those are pretty straightforward. And then what you get in the package And then there is all of the firmware and stuff can be downloaded from these pages as well. So if I go back, I think it was on this one. Pretty sure the firmware was on here somewhere. I think it was down past the reviews. Yeah, so down here at the bottom of the page for the standard radio is your firmware and your software. So this first link is the CPS software, the programming software, and the second one is for the firmware. So I will do a separate video on the CPS software and on the firmware update. All right, so we'll shoot a standalone video here on the computer. I'll open the CPS software, show a little bit about how to program the radios, and then we'll actually do a live firmware update and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, all in all, thank you to Retevis for sending me these radios. I'm really impressed with these radios, especially for what they cost. They're really well built, good feature set, easy to use, good displays, good features. All in all, I'm pretty impressed with these radios. So if you're looking for a fairly high quality, full featured GMRS radio, I think this is a good option. And again, it's available both in black and green. If you're a little more traditional and you want a more traditional looking radio, get the black one. If you want something that's going to stand out when you drop it, take a look at the green one. So with that being said, I am going to hop back over here to the tabletop and we'll finish this up. So we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so we're back. So let's finish up with some final thoughts on these radios. So just like the HA1UV, I'm really a fan of these radios. It's got a great feature set at a very reasonable price. And, I think that this would suit most people fairly well. The only downside that I can say about this radio is it's a little bit tall compared to some of the other radios. It's not massive, but it is a little bit bigger. But if that's my only nitpick, then I really have no complaints with these. Who's this thing for? Anybody who wants a decent GMRS radio, this would be great for an entry-level radio, for your first GMRS radio. This is good for somebody who's looking for a tougher radio that they can kind of kick around and not have to worry about. Somebody who wants one that's got a decent feature set. There are radios out there that have more features, but they're also a lot more money. So for instance, that radio you saw earlier in the video has a lot more features, and it does have a better receiver, but it's also, 3 or 4 times the price. And you saw how bad the screen was in the sun compared to these things. So, if you're just looking for a basic GMRS radio that will do everything you need a GMRS radio to do with a good feature set and a robust build, I think it's hard to go wrong with this HA1G. So you'll be seeing these more on the channel. You'll probably see me with them out and about in the woods when I do things out in the woods this summer. Like I said, I will shoot a video on the CPS software as well as the firmware update process, and I'll see how that goes. But yeah, all in all, it's a fantastic radio at a great price. So thank you, Retevis, for sending me these. I really do appreciate it. You're going to see these in my rotation a lot. Like I said, I like that HA1UV so much, it's kind of become my truck radio now. So at any rate, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you want one of these, you can hit the link below, and it'll take you to the website where you can pick one up. Other than that, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And as always, until next time, 73.